Another fun-packed show this evening. Fun, frivolity, and other stuff. And we've got questions from Camlish Chikwila. You're going to hate me for this, Cam, aren't you? Camlish Chikwila. From Jane Webster, and also from Eileen, our favourite question girl who is here every single week. Sorry we couldn't make it last week. We had a bit of an ingress of water and it was all over the floor, and I was a bit concerned that if I put my foot in it I was going to get electrocuted, but it was okay in the end. And actually by the following morning, with a bit of mopping up, I was pretty much back to normal. Anyway, tonight's a good night. Lots to talk about. Some really... so I say this every week. Some really interesting questions. So they're really boring questions this week, but I'll make them interesting. Good. Little bit of news on the horizon. Not giving away too much detail at the moment, because if it comes off, and the chances are looking very positive, this is the biggest thing for HSP since we started. You're dying to know what it is, and I know a few of you know because I've had a chat with a couple of you, because I couldn't resist telling a couple of people. But it is big. It's massive. It takes us to the next level. And some. Very exciting. You're all gagging to know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you, because I know every time I announce something like this, it falls flat. But I'm really confident that we're in a very strong place. And I can't give you any more clues, but it is just mind-blowing. And I'm sitting here every single day now thinking, oh my God, this is incredible. And it will be. Providing we can just nail a few details, tie together a few loose ends, and come into agreement with a third party. Oh yeah, there's a third party. You're all desperate to know what it is, can't you? No one's saying, come on Kev, what is it? Oh, come on teaser, there we go. Come on, Eileen was the first one to say it. Come on teaser. Well, okay. We're moving to Canada. No. More like Bogner. No! Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Well, it might be a bit like that. But actually nothing like that. It's amazing. And I so desperately want to tell you I'm so incredibly excited. That's all I'm going to tell you. Let's look at question number 1. So I'm going to leave Camlish's to the end because they're really cool. And it means pulling up Photoshop to do some really good stuff. So, Jane Webster. Jane is was a 1-year student on Masterclass, and she sent in this question: how do you back up or store images if you're away from your laptop or an external hard drive? For example, if you are in outer Mongolia, how do you back up the images you have taken? Well, for me personally, because most of the cameras I use tend to be pro cameras, they've got dual card slots. So when you take a picture, it's saved to both cards. So if one SD card goes down, then the other card's got a copy. And in most cases, that's sufficient for me. I do have one camera which has only got a single card slot, and I guess I've been a bit lazy because I've just trusted it. But when I go away on holiday, I usually take a laptop with me. I use Apple, so I've got a MacBook Pro, and I will transfer the images from the card to the computer at the end of the day, and then actually using the card. So I've still got it on the card, and I've still got it on the laptop. I'm kind of get a bit, especially if it's been a really good holiday with some great photographs. So laptop's actually pretty good. If you've got a whopping great, honking great laptop which is really heavy and you're taking it on board a plane, you may feel actually you don't want to carry that. It's heavy and it's taking up valuable cabin space. So your other options, if you've got a good internet connection, you could use one of the online cloud facilities like Apple's iCloud or the Google Photos or Amazon Prime Photos. And of course there's Dropbox, but actually there's a lot others as well. And if you've if you've got an account with Adobe for their products for Lightroom and Photoshop and so on, you may well have an online storage facility with them. But of course, you could be at a place where the internet's unreliable. And in that case, I'm just going to move this across the screen so I can show you what I'm talking about. You could go for what I think is a good compromise and reasonably inexpensive. So what we got here, it's moving around a little bit. You could go for what I think is a good I've got sound creeping up my computer, which I don't want. So there's this thing here by SanDisk. SanDisk make most of the little memory cards. It's a portable SSD, a solid state drive. So there's no moving bits in it. And that little thing there, that is a solid, it's like having a big memory card, but this one is a whole terabyte. And it's quite a fast one at 550 megabytes a second read time. That's fast. They do one which is double that, and the price goes up as well. I think the price is about 200. There we that one. There we go. And the price for that is 219 quid. So you see the price there is 1,000. That's for a much more high speed 1050. You probably don't need that. Just go for the normal extreme. And a 2 terabyte maybe, or a 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte. Oh, my computer's zooming in and out like bonkers. It does that occasionally. But look, £141 for 1 terabyte solid drive. And this thing is built to last. I think it's kind of water resistant rather than you can throw it in a pond. And it's a really good way and a very portable way and a very heavy duty way. To back up your files when you're away. Now, whilst I like that, and I like the fact this thing is built like a brick, although significantly smaller still is this, 130 quid. It's still at 1 terabyte, similar sort of write speeds, but look how tiny it is. It's absolutely, compared with your phone, it's smaller than your phone. It's about a third of the size of your phone. It's minute. And I think that would be so cool. See, I don't have one, but I'm looking at this now thinking, I want one of them. So I could, you know, it's this is my pen I use on Photoshop. It's about that kind of size, about that wide. It's ridiculously small, and it wouldn't take up any weight in your flight bag whatsoever. So for 130 quid, I think that's a cracker. Oh, I've lost the top of my head. Look, I've got a flat head. Let me just adjust that. There we go. There we go. So I think I would go for that myself. Better than taking a laptop, unless you want to do editing while you're away. Okay, hope that's helpful. Thank you, Jane. Now let's do Eileen. When I say let's do her, I don't mean I'll beat her up. No, don't let's beat her up. So, she sent this question in. Actually, before I do that, anyone got any questions about RAV cheaper? Don't know what that means. God, there's a lot of stuff here, but I use a RAV Power. It's great. A RAV Power. Never heard of that. It sounds like a Toyota 4-wheel drive. A RAV Power. Okay, let's see if we can find that up here. RAV Power. Nope, that's not coming up. Okay, don't know. Sorry. I suppose we could Google it, but there are probably hundreds of these things, and they're all okay. Obviously, the more more well-known ones are, and the ones which get the most reviews on Amazon. This is where Amazon scores over so many of its competitors. Is that you can see that people have been using them successfully. They're not broke down or that kind of stuff. So you recommend the RAV Power. Okay, let me just show that. I use RAV Power. It's great. Good. Lovely. Excellent. And it's cheaper. Okay. look that one up as well. Google it. Any other questions on that kind of stuff? It's not a big issue question. That's not a complicated one. And I think, unless I see anything come up on the screen, we're going to go to Eileen's questions anyway. So Eileen's got this question about exporting files from Lightroom or whatever editing software you're using. I don't think she uses Lightroom. I think she uses Affinity for her editing. And she says, can you explain what sizes and file types one would use for exporting files to send to different places? And she's given me some examples. Explanation: what size and file should we export a photo at for? 1. Printing, sending via email, sending into competitions, sending to magazines. So we've got four different things going on here. I'm just going to draw it down again. I prefer that. Who wants to see the top of my head? Be fair. Alright, 4 things. What's the best file to export for printing? So when you're printing, so I'm guessing if you're using Affinity, you have to kind of export it to print it. I've not used Affinity, but in Lightroom you can print straight from Lightroom without having to export it. And in Photoshop you probably would have to export it. And in most cases, those who are into series printing prefer to export TIFF files, tagged image file format, TIFF, but we just call it TIF. TIFF files. They're very high quality files containing a lot of information in the same way that RAW files do. Now, TIFF files contain a lot more information, a lot more detail, a lot more depth than JPEGs, and if you are printing and you want that subtlety of tonal change from one tone to another, it's more likely you're going to get that with a TIFF than you will with a JPEG. So for exporting as photos, I don't print now, but in the past, printing photos, I normally export TIFF images at 300 pixels per inch, 300 little tiny dots per inch. For email, that's a lot easier, JPEG, or you can do PNG files as well, PNG or JPEG, and most people should be able to open them up. They're relatively small files. PNG files have the benefit that you can actually build in, if you know how to do it, an element of transparency. So if you'd photograph something, maybe someone's head, and you wanted a transparent background, so you'd have the head floating over the background, like here. So if you wanted this image as a single image, you do it as a PNG file, and you cut out the background so the background shows through beneath it. It probably doesn't make sense. I don't care. Stick with JPEG for the time being. So JPEG. The internet standard for screen resolution is 72 pixels per inch, so you would export anything that's designed to go on the internet at 72 pixels per inch, unless you're exporting for Facebook, which corrupts your files and crushes them. And I've given out what I'm about to say now a number of times in the past. If you're exporting for Facebook, export at a maximum width of the image of 2048 and a resolution of 240 pixels per inch. Then you'll get the best quality image you can out of Facebook after they crushed it. It still won't be brilliant, because no matter what you do, Facebook crushes the hell out of your image to make it smaller on their servers to take up less space, because millions upon millions of people are uploading photographs every day, so they need to reduce the size. And even on our academy, Matt has set in an algorithm to reduce the file size so that it doesn't take up too much space on our servers. They all do it. Otherwise, so for web, 72 pixels per inch. For Facebook, 2048 long edge and 240 pixels per inch, which should be the default size coming out of your camera, 240 pixels per inch. Then she asks about sending in for competitions and for magazines. Well, you really have to read the rules, because they've all got their own rules, and some prefer some sort of files and some others. Some of them will accept multiple different versions in different formats, in JPEG and PNG and TIFF, possibly even Adobe Acrobat format, PDF. So you just have to read the instructions for that individual whoever's setting the competition, see what their instructions are. If it's one of our competitions, just send it as a JPEG. In fact, if it's one of our competitions, just send it in the same format as you would do for Facebook, which is 2048 alongside and 240 pixels per inch. Okay, I hope that answers Eileen's question. And I'm just about to go on to the big questions coming from Camlish, or Cam, as we know him. Cam. Good man, Cam. So Cam was a 1-year masterclass student. He's now with me for a 2nd year privately mentoring, and we're doing some really good stuff together. I'm really enjoying working with him. He's a very passionate photographer. Excuse me, we'll have a quick cup of coffee. Okay, Eileen, you're happy with that? Good. So let's look at Cam. Cam says, I recently did a photo shoot. I know you did, Cam, because I was there and we were doing it together, and this was one of your photo shoots where you were learning to work with a family and children. And he said, with a mother and a daughter, and it was a slightly windy day. In looking back through the shots, I found that there were issues with the hair. Not mine. Apart from, no, anyway. What is your approach to dealing with this pre-shoot and post-processing? So what is your approach? In other words, my approach. He's saying to me, what's my approach for dealing with this pre-shoot and post-processing? Hair is difficult to edit out in Lightroom, especially when over the eyes. Right. Okay. So we didn't even think about hair, did we, on our photo shoot? Because we were concentrating on how you work with kids. But hair can be an issue when you're photographing, particularly ladies, because they tend to have longer hair than guys. Not always, but quite often. Sometimes they have shorter hair than guys. But a lot of ladies and girls in particular have long hair. 3 of my grandkids, 3 grandsons have got very long hair. I mean, from behind they look like girls. It's right down here, really long. But generally speaking, it tends to be ladies or girls. And when you're photographing them outside, actually even indoors in the studio, if you've got a wind machine blowing, it's possible. Or, you know, some of the tricks that I use to get them to chill out sometimes results of the hair falling over the face. So you get hair coming down and into the shot. And when it covers the eye, it can be a right pain. Sometimes it's attractive and you can work with it, but other times it's just a pain in the bottom. So when you do a photo shoot in a studio on location, it's really helpful to have an assistant with you. And one of the things that assistants should be looking for is hair in the eye, and their job is to go out and just, you know, pull it apart so you can go in and get a picture. If you haven't got the luxury of that, then you just really got to use your common sense. And if you see hair popping into the shot where you're taking it, you stop her. And when you're working with a model or a member of the opposite sex, it's probably best if you don't do it yourself, that you get them to do it, unless you know them really well and you might ask their permission just to move the hair out of the way. But generally I try not to touch anyone I'm photographing, because we live in such a PC crazy world now that, you know, I'm going to get sued and he touched my hair. Anyway, how do we do it in post-processing? And Cam is absolutely right. It would be a pig to try and solve the problem in Lightroom. Lightroom's very limited cloning and healing tools. They're really rubbish. And that's probably because you use Photoshop for that. And if I'm Adobe, why would I build something into Lightroom that's already been done incredibly well in Photoshop? So the cloning and healing tools in Lightroom are rudimentary, to say the least, but in Photoshop they're amazing. So I have prepared, I'm just going to leave some space on this screen, some images, and we're going to look at them. So what I've got here we go. See it moving? Can you see that? No, you can't. I bet you can see that. You can just about see that. Let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, there we go. There's my brush. And that's being moved Good. Okay. So here's a picture of Sarah. She was a masterclass student on the first masterclass we did, and this was one of the shots we did at the end of the year. And I am going to give myself a head. There we go. Looking good, Kev. Yeah, you've either got it or you haven't. Anyway, so this is Sarah, and if we zoom in on Sarah, we can see that there are hairs straddling her face, both chin, cheek, and the eye. And here's an image from Camleish's shoot. And here, I'm just zoom out so you can see what we're dealing with. So this young girl, I think, is about 15. I think she is. She was part of 3 kids in one family, the oldest daughter. And no hairs in the eye. We've got one there kind of creeping in a bit. And you might think these are a bit irritating. These ones down here, you might want to remove those. And see, I don't really think they're a big issue. But this one going across the face I want to get rid of. And here's the thing. When you're photographing images for a client, you have to be very sensitive to the client's needs. And if you start repairing everything on the face, you could end up with a face which doesn't truly reflect the client. Now, removing a hair is actually not too much of an issue, but I'm saying this because people then go on to remove every spot and blemish and zit and mole and removing hunchbacks and bow legs and all that kind of stuff, and they may be happy with all that stuff. So when you're working with a paying client, you have to kind of have good communication so you know exactly what they expect of you and what they would want you to do. Hair, not a big issue, unless it's a young lady with a really hairy lip or something like that, or a hairy chin. That might be a sensitive thing, especially for a teenager. And if you go and start removing zits from a teenager's face, on the one hand you think they love it, on the other hand they may think that you're. I did this once with my daughter when she was a teenager. I removed her zits. My God, it was as if hell opened and the demon from the depths erupted out of the chasm and attacked me with all the venom that she could muster. She was so annoyed that I was suggesting that she had zits that needed removing, whereas she did. She's always had a bad acne problem. When she got a little bit older, she laughed about it. But, teens are teens, and they don't think like some of us who are mature and grown up. Hair. Let's go back to hair. So I'm going to zoom in on this. Let's zoom in. And we're going to use a couple of tools from on the left hand panel up here, and on this panel here we've got the spot healing brush, the healing brush tool, and the patch tool. And these 3 tools are very they're almost artificial intelligence, because what's going on here is that when you use these tools on something, unlike the old-fashioned clone stamp tool where you're copying a pixel from one part of the picture to another, with these tools you're copying pixels from one part of the picture to another, but they're blending together to give a natural look. So if I were to go for the spot healing brush, which is meant for getting rid of spots, by doing that was clever, wasn't it? Another one and another one. Yeah, what it's doing is sampling the texture and the colours and contrasts immediately surrounding itself and using that to fill in whatever I decide to paint over. So if I go over that hair, in theory, so it's done a reasonable job. And I don't know if you can see what I can see, but I can see that the image is slightly, it's not quite right. Let's try this one. I'm going to make it a bit bigger, but square bracket keys does that. And that's done nothing. Nothing at all. How weird. There you go, there it's gone. But I can see on my screen, which is a much higher resolution than yours, that there's something weird. In fact, I think you can see it on, if I just change to there, you can probably see that little patch. See that there? See, that actually wasn't there in the original. If I keep an eye on that, if I hide that layer to show the original layer, see, that's what it looked like. So you can see that it actually has not done a very good job. It's okay on the spots, but it doesn't work particularly well on that hair. Now, the thing is that the tool we're using, which is a spot healing tool, actually does work pretty good on hair in many cases, but for some reason it's not on this one. And this is the pain with all these Adobe tools. You can't predict what they're going to do. Just when you think you know exactly the right tool for a job, you'll start selecting it, start using it, and it looks awful. And quite often it's the tool you least thought you needed to use produce the best results. The algorithms written to control these tools is unknown to anybody apart from those working in the higher echelons of Adobe. So we don't know what's going to. Everybody's skin is different, the colours are different, the texture is different, the light's different, and so on and so forth. So what works on one person's face, if you then pick the same tool and use it on somebody else's, it may not work. It may look awful. And you might get someone who's new to Photoshop saying, oh, this tool doesn't work. It's because you've just got one of those faces where you need to use a different tool. So in this case here, I'm actually not going to use that tool. I'm going to undo this, which is Control and Z or Command and Z. If you're watching this in America, it's Control and Z and Command and Z. So Control on a PC, Command on a Mac. I'm working on a Mac. Haven't used a PC for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 9, something like that. I wouldn't know how to use one of the current models because it's very different to the ones I used to work on. Anyway, let's go back to the tool menu up here on the left, and you can see I was using the spot healing brush. I'm going to use the healing brush tool, and the healing brush tool is different to the spot healing brush in that rather than with the spot healing brush it samples from the area immediately surrounding it, with the healing brush tool you select the area. You choose where it's going to clone from. So I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller, square bracket key, and you can, that little thing inside there, by the way, is giving you an insight of what's inside the circle. Don't let it put you off. So I want to paint on that, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to sample from here so that as I move this up across, it's going to copy this area onto this. And to sample this area, I hold down the Alt key and I click. I've now sampled that area. And you can tell I've sampled it because as I move over the hair, you can see actually that the hair started to disappear because there's a preview from the area that I sampled. And if I just kind of do this, oh, this is much better. I'm actually doing this with the mouse rather than the... Isn't that better? I'll do it again. Sorry, my image is bouncing around again like it does. Sample from there, paint on there. Sample from there, paint on there. Boom, done, sorted. Let's do another one. Let's do this one. So I'm going to sample from there. Actually, I think I'm going to sample from there. I'll tell you why, because, excuse me, what I want to do, you see this little ridge here, little light ridge. I want it to continue under the hair. So I'm going to sample from there and paint it on there. So there we go. Actually, she's now got an enormously long ridge. It looks like a scar, so I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm sampled from there, from here, and I'm going to paint over it. I've actually removed it. She no longer has it. To me, I've created a bit of a pattern there. The same thing's appeared twice, so I'm going to get rid of one of those. Sample from there and paint over there. And this hair's going across this sort of faded shadow area. There's a shadow running up and down there, and then it goes into hair. So I'm going to sample from that area where the shadow meets the hair, and then move the mouse over the bit I want to erase to make sure it all lines up, and then there we go, look at that. Not bad. Just going to make it a bit smaller so I can get rid of the little tiny imperfection. No one in reality would have spotted that on the photograph. It's too small. And there we go. Now this one up here is a bit more complicated. I'm going to a bit bigger. I'm going to sample from there and sample from there. And in a moment I'm just going to get rid of this one just to get it out of the way. Let's zoom in right into the eye. So we've got this hair running across. I should point out that it's much easier if you control the hair during the photo shoot, so you don't have to do this with all your images. Imagine mum has commissioned a dozen images of her daughter and the hair needs to be removed in all of them. You'll be editing forever, all the way through the night, all the way through the week. And your partner, your spouse, whatever, your parents, they won't see you for weeks and they think you probably died editing upstairs in your office, on your computer. So ideally you try not to get the hair in the shot during the shot. But if you do, this is how you get rid of it. So you can see here that we've got a hair running across, and I'm going to make this a fair bit smaller. Again, using the square bracket keys. And now I'm just having to pick where I'm going to select sample from. So I'm going to sample from there and just paint over that bit. And again, sample from there and paint over there. Sample from there and get rid of that bit. Sample from there and get rid of that. Sample from here. You see I'm sampling all the time from different places. And I'm looking for textures and colour. So I'm actually going to get rid of that bit there completely because it just bugs me. I don't want to waste time. And see, I've got this little blobby bit on the end. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sample from the hair itself. And then do that. Yeah, makes sense. From there, and just that bit. And I've actually made the hair thicker and stronger. And we've still got a little bit left over here. Gosh. And of course from a distance no one is actually going to see this stuff. I'm just being really, really finicky just to show you what's possible. Gosh, this is so annoyingly short on space. Okay, let's zoom out. See, no one would see that, no one would know, and you've got rid of the hair. Right, that's an easy one. Let's do a harder one. Let's do Sarah. She might even be watching tonight, who knows? Let's zoom out. There she is, there's Sarah. And we have this hair going right across the face and across the eyes. So it's coming across from this side and it's running over here. And it's kind of curling up there, ending in there. So the first thing I would tend to use is to try the healing brush tool, the spot healing brush, and let's see whether we have any luck with this at all. Sometimes it works. Not bad. Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, we can get by with that. See, this is that's not so good. No, okay, so I'll undo that a few times to get that back. And I'm not even going to try over here because this is ridiculous. So now I'm going to go back to healing brush tool, and we're just going to concentrate on this hair here. So the trick to this, where it goes right across an eye, is to do it in stages and to follow the lines of the eye itself. When I say follow the lines, what I'm saying is, you see the eye's lines, they go curve around the top and they come straight down here. So you can see that behind the hair here there's actually a little dark furrow, and then it gets a bit brighter there. By the time it crosses over this bit, we've got this shadow area here and hair's going through it, and then we've got the top of the lid and then some highlights. All these things need to be considered. We got crumbs, we've got all these hairs, eyelashes, things here, and of course here it goes across the pupil. So we've got to try and be careful. Got to go in close enough so that we can see the detail. And well, let's see what happens. So I've got one hand on it, Alt periodically to sampling now, and I'm going to sample from here because I'm going to paint that over there. Hasn't quite worked. Sample from there. Oops. Pressing the wrong button, that's why. Not watching what I'm doing. So I'm going to sample from there and paint it there. That's better. Sample from there and paint it. Oh, that's good. I didn't do that, by the way. The software is doing it on its own. There is some kind of crazy conflict between my Wacom tablet and my computer, and whenever I plug in my Wacom tablet these days, crazy things like this happen, and sometimes I just lose my rag. I think it's probably twisted the picture. It has. See, I didn't do that. Put it back. And we'll zoom. I need to go back to that tool first of all. Hope you're following this, despite having to keep stopping to adjust the image because of the conflict between the tablet and my computer. And I noticed I took a sample from inside that little shaded area so I could copy the shaded area onto the hair. I'm going to do a similar thing here now, and again using the Alt key I'm going to sample from there and paint it on there. And because I didn't quite line it up properly, I've got this little hair black thing going on, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And again, sample from there, and boom, lovely. Sample from there, and oh, look at that, that's good, isn't it? Sample from there, good. Sample from here. I didn't do that. That's the computer on its own mind. Sample from here and paint it there. Oh, look, that's good. Yeah. Sample from here. Sample from here. Sample from here. Just do that. And again from there. Constantly changing where I'm sampling from so it looks realistic. And so we've got this kind of reflection thing. This is a top of the eye, and what we're looking at here is a catch light with blue sky in it. So I'm going to sample from there and paint it on there. And who knows what it looked like, because we've no way of knowing, so it doesn't really matter what you do here to some extent, because we don't know what it really looked like. But look, the hair's gone. And from here I'm going to sample from there perhaps to see if I can paint over it. Oh, look at that. That worked. And then so you can see it's not actually 100% perfect, but it's no one in their right mind will ever zoom in this close, of course, and you can get away with murder. So I'm sampling from this area to paint it on there. There we go. Sample from there to paint over that. Sample from there to paint over that. Sample from there to paint over that. It's good enough. Look at that. It's really good. And sample from there to paint over that. And from there to paint over that. Now let's zoom out. Not bad. You'd have to do these last little bits, but I'm not going to spend all night doing one thing. You've got the idea. You have to keep sampling from different. Oh gosh, you see, I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking I can't leave it like that. I can't. So I'm going to sample from here and paint over there like that. Sample from there to get that little bit. Oh. Sample from there to get that little bit. And there we go. So that's how I do it. And I would not put that I would not even try to do that in Lightroom. You wouldn't be able to. Whew. I hope that's helpful, Cam. And on my Photoshop courses, which I have planned for probably November onwards, we'll be looking in more depth about how you touch up faces, how you, let me come back to me, how you deal with imperfections, how you smooth the skin out, how you brighten the eyes, how you get rid of blood vessels, how you get rid of yellow teeth, and so on and so forth, and so on. So that was just one small thing, getting rid of the hairs. And we haven't really scratched the surface on how all those tools work, the various tools for cloning and healing in Photoshop, but you can have good fun with them. So we're 12 minutes past. Let's try and get at least one more of his questions in. He said in post-processing, which is the editing he's talking about, once you've taken the shots, you're processing post taking the picture, post after the event, post-processing. Sometimes we just say in post. In the film world, in video production, they call it just post, and it's a terminology which is creeping into photography parlance. So post-processing, yes, post. So in post, with photos for a portrait shoot you have done, do you keep a consistent filter that portrays a consistent look and feel? This is interesting, because he sent me his assignment images. So we spent maybe 2.5 hours photographing 2 families, might be 2 hours, and he sent me through a whole bunch of images from the first family we photographed, and they had a kind of look to them, but some look different and others look completely different. And if you ever shot weddings, or if you've seen images from a decent wedding photographer, you see that they all tend to have the same kind of colour look or feel. That there's a feeling to them that identifies them all as kind of being taken at the same time by the same person with the same kind of treatment. And when you watch a movie, particularly some of the more stylish films, they have a look to the shots, the way that colours are handled, the way that shadows and highlights and midtones are all handled, the way they're processed in every single shot tends to be fairly similar, so that you can say that film's got a look. Might be a good look, might be a bad look, might be a look of intensity, of energy, of romance, of comedy, it could be horror, but it's got a look. And the question is, do you actually build that in, or do I actually build that into all my shots? Well, it's another one of those questions, and I have a lot of these, where the answer is, it depends. So for a wedding, I tend to have the same look running through it all. When I'm shooting an individual, the client lets me, because they know the way I work, I'll handle different shots in different ways to create different effects. And quite often they may get 2, 3, or even 4 different styles in one bunch of images from me, because I've chosen a style which I think best suits. And going back to movies, there's another good example of that. In a movie, you'll find as the scenes change, so the colours and the contrasting and in fact the whole way that the scene is treated could vary significantly from the next scene, because every film these days and television production, they go through what's called a colorist. A colorist's job is to work on the film to create a feeling in each scene by use of colour and tone and shade and lighting and so on. And you can do that as a photographer. And in Lightroom, of course, you can save, if you're working on a look and you really like it, you can save it as a preset. I'm going to quickly load up Lightroom, and then we'll call it a day because we've slightly overrunning. Yes, lots of sampling to do. Yes, absolutely, Cam. Richard, I've tried everything. I've tried reinstalling the software, plugging, unplugging, rebooting over a period of several months, and I haven't got to the bottom of the problem yet. It's really interesting, and over the past couple of days I've actually had this permanently unplugged. I've been using my mouse for editing, and it's still been doing it. So now I'm really confused. It's almost as if something of the software, even though when the software is not being used, is creating a conflict. I have seen some talk on the internet about this happening on some Macs, and at the moment I've not found a solution. It's very irritating. Right, what was I going to do? Oh, someone remind me. Oh yeah, presets. So let's just close this. In the editing mode, or the develop module it's called, you have a number of presets that come with Lightroom. You can create your own, or you can buy some. So here's one that I bought. It's okay. It's a matted one. You can, as you move across them, you can see the effect. You can get some really weird ones, and ones that I've built myself. Where are they? Gosh. User presets. So these are ones I've built myself. There's quite a few, but you can see what's tend to have. Oh no, it's crashed on me. I'm getting a circle of death spinning around. If I'm working on let's come back. You can't see, can you? Because I haven't switched over to it. And the computer's frozen. Oh no. Right. I'll do that again, shall I? Because you weren't watching, because computer decided to play up. Anyone say? Buy a PC. Yeah, buy a PC. Yeah, absolutely. As if that's ever going to happen. All right. Yes. So in the develop module, down here, you've got this section called presets, and you get a number with Lightroom. Some I've bought, which have kind of weird effects. And you can see here, all of these I've created myself. So some of them are quite good, some of them are utter rubbish, but they were designed to go with certain types of images. So for instance, let me try and find this one here, and that one, and that one. They were one of my corporate customers for a certain type of look. That they're a sports company. They teach sports in school. They train teachers how to teach sports, and they run sports academies. And they wanted some gritty shots, so I put together these three here. There's where am I? Can't see it. Reportage. So this one, not that one. Oh, that one. So for a lot of my wedding stuff, where I shoot in black and white, I had this one thing called Reportage, and it does a number of things to create that kind of black and white look with a slight kind of tinge, browny, almost sepia tone to it, and some clarity and some other stuff. And I often create presets by working on some images for a client and really liking a look. I'll save it, and then I'll end up using it on other things. But not every preset works on every type of image. Well, it works, but it just looks rubbish. And of course now Lightroom has its own presets in here. So you've got a whole bunch, and you just move your mouse over them, and it changes the image. And if you like something, so let's say let's find one. Let's say I like. Oh gosh. Let's get it out of black and white. I'm just going to get rid of all my personal presets, reset everything, and then let's pick one from here. So let's say I like that, but I think that's a bit too orange. I can actually increase or decrease the effect up here. So those come with it, And it does mean that you could actually add that look to all of your images. And in fact, if you had a particular look, let's say it was that, and you wanted to apply that to all your shots, when you import your images, one of the options to import is, just trying to find it. There we go. You can choose all the presets you got, so you can actually import all your images all at once. So maybe you shot 500 for a wedding, 1,000 for a wedding. Every shot that comes in gets that preset added to it straight away. Saves a lot of work. But it doesn't mean the picture's brilliant. You still got to go through and individually check and tweak. It never say, you can't, as a professional, just blanket apply all those settings and think, wow, that looks so cool, because every shot's different. Some shots are too bright, some shots are too dark, contrast is too high on one shot, contrast is too low, there's an overexposure on that one, there's an underexposure on that one. So you have to go through and still tweak all the shots individually to do the job properly. I hope that's answered at least that two of Cam's questions for tonight. Thank you guys for submitting your questions. Thank you, Jane, Cam and Eileen. Good questions, very different. Nice to do a little bit of work in Photoshop. I always enjoy it. And who knows, this time next week when we do number 16 of Ask Kevin, I could be saying this is the last one. I've been threatening that for a few weeks, but I could also have the big news that you all want to hear. I'm going to get some phone calls and emails after this. Psst, Kev, you can tell me, I'm your mate. No. Although a small whiskey might help persuade me. Listen, guys, have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. See ya. Bye.